Welcome to the Shootale podcast. If you don't know me, my name is Martin Depict. I'm a photographer and videographer based in Los Angeles. And I just got back from a trip. I went up to Northern California, up in like the Napa, Sonoma area to do a 2-location shoot with Michaela Demeter. Had a lot of fun, got a lot of stuff done. But I got back and my hard drive, this big thing, it's a RAID system. So this is my G-RAID Shuttle 8 or Shuttle XL is what they used to call them. I got back and it was off. So typically I leave this thing on because I can, work on my home computer anywhere really now with like apps like AnyDesk and a couple other apps that I use. But I noticed that it's been off for about 8 days now, and my computer wasn't off. I was still able to access my computer, but I was not able to access my hard drive. So when I got home, I was like, I hope everything's okay. Luckily, I think for this case scenario, I don't think that the hard drives in this unit are bad. I think that the hard drives in the unit are still good, and the housing itself just has an issue with the power source. So I've tried different wires. I've tried different outlets. It didn't want to turn on. I didn't even get a fan spinning on. No lights, no nothing. So for sure, it has to do with how it intakes power. If I was more into like soldering and like, taking things apart, it would probably be something that I could probably figure out pretty easily, because power components are usually maybe 2 different parts. You don't necessarily even have to really touch like any of the other components. It's usually just like a power pack or a grid that you plug in the wire to that then plugs into the wall. So most likely that's what failed here. The reason why I'm not freaking out as much as I think I should is because I use Backblaze to back all my stuff up. I don't hear a lot of people talking about Backblaze. I know it's like I had to find it on my own. No photographer told me about it. No one in the industry really told me about it. I don't know how many people use it. If anything, I just think it's like a great way to back up things to the cloud. So I use it in like the second tier, which isn't the most inexpensive, but it's not expensive either. It's not as expensive as Dropbox. It's not as expensive as Google Drive. Like, it's unlimited backup space for, I think it's like just under $100. I've also never had a situation to where like I've had to recover files off of it yet. So this is my first time. So I guess like if this goes bad, if I'm not able to recover the files off of the hard drive or from the cloud, then we definitely have issues. The first thing I did when I noticed that the hard drive was dead and I couldn't get it to power on was that I called Western Digital. So Western Digital bought G Technology a couple years ago. G Technology, as far as I know, they haven't made any more new drives. It's all been Western Digital stuff. They rebranded the Shuttle XL to the Shuttle 8, which makes more sense because there's 8 hard drives in here. This one in particular is 144 terabytes. I think they go up to over 200 terabytes now with the bigger hard drives, but this one, 144. When I called them, they checked if it was still under warranty. I got this one in 2022. Each one of their units comes with a 5-year warranty, so it was still under warranty. It's under warranty until April of 2027, so thank God for that. Always get the warranty. Luckily, this time it was free. I didn't have to pay for it, but always get the extended warranty, especially if it has to do with like anything expensive. Like this unit wasn't cheap when I got it. It was like 10 grand plus when I got it. So not a cheap unit. It's definitely something that I would encourage people to invest in, because storage is something that we go through a lot, and I'll talk more about it later, about the storage tax that we have to pay as creators or photographers and videographers. But anyway, they told me that there was an option to get a replacement. And so there's 2 options. There's a freeway, which basically I would send back the unit. They would ship me a new one and I wouldn't have to pay anything. There's the second way where it's like they call it the advance return, which I pay $25 plus a deposit for the unit, which they hold on to until I return the old one. I went with that option because I wanted to make sure that I can format these drives if they are still working before I send them back, because I don't want to send, sensitive files back to a company. I'd rather not. So I just got the new one in the mail. I haven't even opened the box yet. I'm going to start restoring the files tonight. If that goes good, I'm going to put these old drives in the new unit, format it, then put the old drives in the old unit, ship this whole thing back, and then just continue to use the new unit as nothing ever happened. This could have been like my worst nightmare. Honestly, in the past, I've broken 2 hard drives. Luckily, I've never had a memory card go corrupt on me, but those 2 hard drives from those 2 situations, I vowed for that to never happen to me again. Because once you go through it and like, you know, you look like a dumbass to the client, like, oh, I lost all your files, is just so stupid. There's like no way to like come back from that with a client. Like it's the most unprofessional thing that could happen as a photographer. So definitely back up your stuff multiple times. So what I do now to prevent things like this from happening again is that after a shoot day, I dump the files onto my laptop. So that's already one backup. Those memory cards, when I shoot with them, I don't format them right away. I have multiple memory cards, and it's a reason why everyone should have multiple memory cards, because you want to have that physical backup. So this is my card case. I have 6 CFexpress cards in here, and then there's SD cards behind the CFexpress cards. So the ones that are turned over right now, these cards are the ones that have been used, and I am reminded that if they're turned over like this, do not format them. I flip them back over once I'm done working on the project, and I don't need this information anymore. So this is sort of like the first, I guess, is the original source of the memory. I just keep as like, I guess, my first backup. My laptop would then be my second backup. My third backup is an SSD drive. So professionals, I'm sure you guys are buying this for every big shoot. So buy an SSD drive or a specific hard drive for that client's project. And then you probably have an archive somewhere to store all these SSDs. It's just good to have. And like you pass along this charge. So like these might go for like, I don't know, memory's getting expensive right now, but this is a 4 terabyte SSD. I remember when I bought this is probably $200, but I wouldn't be surprised if these are going for like 400 maybe now. So this is a SanDisk 4 terabyte SSD. It's the fastest one, I believe. It's the Extreme Pro portable SSD. So it has the fastest read and write speed. These are not meant to work off of. I've heard horror stories about these. Don't work off of these. These are just meant for backups. So please, be aware of that. Don't work off of these. I'm sure you can work off of them, but they're not like things that you should be working off of, because if it gets too hot, it damages the drive, and so it's just not worth it. So that's where am I? This is my third backup. So original source, first backup, original source is my first backup. Second backup is the laptop. SSD is my third backup. Then once I get home, I connect this SSD onto my home computer, and then I dump all the files onto this Shuttle XL. So this is the one that I work off of. These drives are meant to be worked off of. They have fast transfer speeds, I think up to 40 gigs a second. As long as you have a Thunderbolt 3 cable and you're able to get those full Thunderbolt 3 speeds, you're good. They haven't made a unit faster than that. At least G Technology hasn't. I have seen some that are up to Thunderbolt 4 and some SSDs that are up to Thunderbolt 5 now. So, that's awesome, but those are crazy more expensive than this one now. I think this 144 terabyte is like $7,000, which is down $3,000 than what it used to be, considering how expensive memory is now because of AI and how much memory they're using and buying up all the memory available. That's what sort of caused the price to go up on a lot of these drives and SSDs. I know that they're preferring SSD drives over the HDDs, but still, it's caused everything to go up. Memory cards, HD drives, SSDs, even RAM, all that stuff has gone up. So this is my fourth backup. So once I get home, the files are put into this shuttle, which I then work off of the files off of this thing. And then as I'm working off of the files from here, the files from here are then uploaded to the cloud using Backblaze. Again, it's around $100 a year. unlimited storage. This is 144 terabytes. I believe I've used more than half of it since I got it in 2022. All this stuff I have uploaded and saved on the cloud. And let's say that I was working on a project that was urgent. Like I'm working on a big client's project. They need the files by like next week. You know, I don't have the files to work on right now, or not able to download the files from anywhere. What Backblaze can do is that for every 8 terabytes, I believe it's a couple $100. I want to say $300 to $400 for every 8 terabytes. Is that you can select which folders from the cloud that you want onto a hard drive. They would put it on a hard drive for you, mail it to you, and then you then get that drive overnighted to you, and you can work off of that drive. So that's a huge plus. I think it's a great service to have. I know that there's other companies that do it, but I always recommend Backblaze because it's the one that I personally use. Now, like I said earlier, I've never had to recover this much files from the cloud before. Like I've maybe had to recover, I don't know, a couple gigs worth of drives from the cloud, especially like if I don't have this hard drive to work off of, but I want to download them on my laptop and work off of my laptop. I definitely just downloaded stuff off of the cloud to be able to work on. And there's a couple different ways to download files for free from Backblaze. So one is a free download. They basically put the files that you select in a zip file, you download them, you unzip it, and you have all the files that you worked on. Now for 70 terabytes, that's a little bit more restrictive. Downloading 70 terabytes in a zip file is a little bit difficult. So they have an app called Backblaze Restore. So it's basically the opposite of what the original Backblaze app does. So Backblaze app uploads and Backblaze Restore downloads with no restriction to how much files or how much you're downloading. So that is what I'm going to be using for the new drive, and hopefully everything goes good. Again, I'll let you guys know if something goes bad. And again, I don't think any of the drives in here are damaged. I should have everything on here still. My goal is to restore all the files onto the new drives. Once I see that everything is restored and okay, I'll then format these drives and send this guy back, and I'll be good. But yeah, if this was 5-6 years ago, I would probably be shitting myself right now, because I think during or right before quarantine, I started backing everything up to Backblaze, and I've like I said, I've made videos on this before, and it's something that I think every photographer has different ways to back stuff up, right? Like the way that I use these RAID units is different. I use RAID 0, meaning that I'm able to use the full storage of the RAID, and if one drive gets corrupted, the whole thing goes to shit. I know it's not the best way to do it. There's a bunch of different RAID tiers, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Each one of them, they sort of like, it sort of breaks up your memory or your storage into a puzzle piece. So each one of your hard drives holds a little bit of all the files. And if one drive gets corrupted, then you just put a new drive in, and then from the other drives, it's able to restore the missing pieces. But then you're not able to use the full storage capacity. And because I'm backing up all this stuff onto the cloud, this is just the best way that I've seen that I would use it. Plus, HDDs are not as expensive as SSDs. I know they are still expensive, but I think, I think they'll come down eventually. After the AI bubble pops, I'm sure all this stuff will go back down in price. But because of the whole AI boom, RAM, like I said, HDDs, SSDs, SD cards, CFexpress type B cards, all these companies have, SanDisk went up like how much percent? Like their stock went through the roof. Like if I would have known, dude, I would have, invested in SanDisk. But it had, who would have fucking known? It's insane. But anyway, another thing that I wanted to talk about is this idea of storage tax, because storage tax is something that not a lot of photographers, I don't know if they take into account fully what it is. Like a lot of photographers choose to shoot with the highest megapixel camera, have it as their main shooter. especially like if you're shooting weddings and you're shooting like 60 megapixel photos, that is so much space. And like, again, if you're one of these photographers, you should be buying one of these for each one of your projects or multiple of these and charging the client for it. And then this is how you archive their stuff. This should be labeled, such and such wedding, and then the date. And then this should be put in like a box or like a very organized location, maybe like a storage unit or something, and you're good. But you should not be having to pay for storage. It should always be something that you are factoring into the cost of what you charge for shoots. For example, and I'm going to give a crazy example here because I think this is sort of like I think it's a gimmick. I think this 7K open gate is a gimmick. If Canon has been putting these features into cameras and only letting people use them in 7K, I'm not sure if it's only in RAW, but if you can only use it in 7K at 10-bit 422 or at 12-bit RAW, you're using an hour and 30 minutes every 2 terabytes or less if it's RAW. How many people are going to be using that feature? Unless you're a huge YouTuber or a huge TikToker that needs the ability to shoot, vertical video and horizontal at the same time, which is where I believe the evolution of content creation is going, is to just shoot one frame and then utilize that same frame for multiple usage. I know that that's what they're trying to push and promote, but limiting it to only 7K is such bullshit. Like Panasonic and Lumix cameras, you've been able to shoot the full sensor for years now. And people have been using, Lumix cameras to shoot in that aspect ratio and then utilize it. And then barely now we're getting Canon and Sony catching up to this open gate stuff. I mean, I know it's been used in like cinema cameras and stuff like that, but I'm not counting those cameras because those are professional grade cameras that are supposed to have all the bells and whistles. But when Canon is like putting these bells and whistles and restricting them to only, shoot in 7K, I don't think, like the R6V, the Canon R6V is supposed to be an entry-level cinema camera. And actually, I won't even say that. The Canon R6V is a direct competitor to the Sony ZV-E1 Mark II. And they're already on their second version. They're probably about to put out the third version because the Mark II has been out for like maybe 2 years almost now. So that's where I think Canon is trying to do with these V cameras. They're creator-based cameras targeted to content creators, but they didn't want to use content creator in their marketing because I think it pisses, other people that use their cameras off. So they didn't want to label it as like a vlog camera. They want to label it as like, this is a camera that could do, open gate and like could be a great crash cam. And 100% it can. But small creators that purchase that camera are not going to use open gate because they're going to realize really quickly that one of these doesn't go as far as if you're shooting in 4K long gap in 10-bit 422. So that's what I mean when I say storage tax, is that like the more you shoot, the more memory you need to store the files, and memory right now isn't cheap. So just be cautious of what you're shooting. Like for me, and I've mentioned this a lot before, so if I'm shooting photos and the photos themselves are not going to be, printed on like some huge billboard or something like that, like if I know that they're going to be for social media use only, the Canon R1 is where I go. 25, 26 megapixels, great low light performance. I did sort of take shots at the camera for not having the best dynamic range and having it be like a flagship for Canon, but it's okay. Exposed for the highlights, like digital photographers expose for the highlights, so we're fine. If I was going to shoot for a client that is more commercial, maybe I'm shooting something small that they need a lot of detail for, then I'll pull out this camera, which is the R5 Mark II. So the R5 Mark II shoots 45 megapixels, I believe. More megapixels, but also more memory. My EDC camera is a Fuji GFX RF. That's 100 megapixels. That I'm not spraying and praying. Like my R1, I don't like calling it spraying and praying, but I'm shooting in bursts because I believe that the best pose is the one right before you hit the pose and or right after the pose. So the one that's a little bit more fluid, not necessarily so locked in, that's always the best shot for me. So I'm always like click, 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 click. I'm never just one and done. I rather have options as well. The people that I work with, I think they look at everything in the photo, and so the more options that you have, the better. So yeah, I went off into a tangent, but that's how I shoot. So, but with my GFX, that's not what I do at all. It's just literally, I'm framing the shot, making sure that I get it. Maybe I'm taking 2 or 3 frames of the same thing. That's way too much memory, especially on a GFX sensor. I think it's like 16-bit photos, which are even more memory, is just not even worth thinking about where I'm going to put that. Plus in that camera, because it's a Fuji, I'm shooting RAW plus JPEG. So yeah, more memory, more problems, I guess. That's probably what I'm going to name this episode, more memory, more problems. But there's companies out there that are taking advantage of people for like with this storage tax. Like I think SanDisk is definitely one of them. They've always been on like the higher end of memory cards, but then like ProGrade has been able to sell, you know, decent quality memory cards that I've never had one fail on me for like almost half the price. That to me just sort of like speaks volumes. And like, you know, are these companies just trying to make money, or are they really looking out for the creator? It's things like that, you know, like, do you want a reliable memory card? Yes. Do you want something that can read and write for whatever you're shooting? Yes. Some cameras only take certain types of memory cards. You can only get the full usage of what the camera can do if you have the right memory card in it. Like if I was just shooting on an SD card with my R1 doesn't even take SD cards. What this one, the R5. If I was just using an SD card in this camera, I could not use the AK RAW function. I can only use I could probably use the AK, 10-bit, but it would probably overheat really quickly because the transfer speed needs to be fast. CFexpress Type B cards, although they're bigger, I would say they're a little bit more sturdy. They don't break as often. They have a little bit more weight. They're like, they feel, like here, let me see if I can pull one out. So this is a 512 gigabit CFexpress Type B by SanDisk. This currently is going for $450 on Best Buy. You can probably find it for cheaper. You can find some for like $380, but $450 is MSRP. Insane. I think I bought this for like $250. So insane. Now, on the other hand, ProGrade, this is a 1 terabyte CFexpress Type B. These cards have always been cheaper. This one is $520. So that's MSRP, $520. So for $70 more, you get double the size. It's insane to me. Like I've never had before I started using ProGrade, I was always very skeptical of their cards. It's just like, I never want to use something that hasn't been tested or as reliable. I always went with SanDisk because it's what I've heard would work the best. And so I decided to just give it a try. And like immediately you get one of these. The packaging is not great. It's like a little cardboard box with like plastic wrapping. It's not great. It doesn't feel the same as the SanDisk. The SanDisk come in like, one of those things that's hanging and you have to cut it out of the plastic. Like it feels like it's been protected. This thing feels like it's been, thrown around in boxes. But surprisingly, I've never had any issues with ProGrade. I have multiple now. They're cheaper. I get more space. Again, I think the writing speed is the same. The writing speed is not the same. The ProGrade 1 terabyte is double the read speed. Oh, shit. So the SanDisk Extreme Pro can read 1700 megabits a second and write 14 megabits a second. And then the ProGrade can read 34 megabits per second and it can write 15 megabits per second. So it writes faster and reads faster. I think the read speed is the transfer speed, like when you're dumping the files. So that's helpful. The writing speed is only 100 megabits faster. So it's that is interesting. I didn't know that. Maybe I didn't pay too much attention to that when I got it. I did realize that they dump a lot faster for sure. So yeah, I don't know. I think like I know memory cards are really expensive right now. I know like if you have your batch of cards that you use for your projects, you probably don't want to buy more. I get it. I think for safety, this is a good way to like use your memory cards is just like have them flipped over and then make sure that you don't format them until after you're done working on whatever project is on them. It's worked for me. I have multiple of these cases with multiple cards. So it's always good to have a backup in that sense. I don't know. I'd recommend it. Like if you don't have enough money to buy a RAID system, because I know they're very expensive, at least get multiple SSD cards and charge your clients. Like maybe you're not doing like big shoots, right? Where you can charge them an extra $300 for an SSD. But let's say for every 4 shoots, you're charging an extra $80, $70 for, memory. So it's just like an additional cost that they pay, and you then get extra money for your hard drives, and you're able to have that peace of mind, not just for yourself, but also for them. Like one thing that I've hated is that I've worked with photographers, or I'll tell you this, when I got engaged, I paid for a photographer to take our photos while I was proposing. I was already so fucking nervous. I was sweating my ass off. We were down in what's it called? Playa del Carmen. So we were in Playa del Carmen. It was hot. I'm sweating my ass off. I'm nervous. I've practiced so much, like what I was gonna say, and I think in the moment I couldn't get it all out, so I just said like I cut it down to like one sentence, and would you marry me? And she said yes, and happiest day of my life up to this point. And the photos, I didn't like them. I didn't like any of the photos. I tried to get it to where like the sunset was behind us, and I don't think the photographer understood. Like I was like, hey, I'm gonna get her on the beach. We'll I'll try to make sure that the sunset is behind us. And I don't think he understood because he was shooting not towards the sunset. And then when I got the photos back, the color corrects it wasn't anything special. I just expected more. And then I did get to see some of his work and stuff. But again, I think it was a photographer that was recommended by the hotel. And I think that was where my mistake was. But luckily, I brought my own camera. I brought my R1 with the 20 millimeter 1.4, and I took sort of a POV shot of me holding Luna's hand with her ring on it, and I'll throw it up right here. But man, the hard part about that is that like I got the photos, I downloaded the photos, they're all JPEGs. None of them were great. I know if I would ask for the RAWs, I know how photographers are about that, and so but I still asked for the RAWs, and he told me that they don't keep files on record for longer than 30 days, which I thought was kind of crazy, because if you're charging as much as I paid for 30 minutes, you're going to tell me that you don't have this stuff archived is just insane. So just back your stuff up. If clients ask for photos down the line, at least you still have them. And I think a way that you can work to archive or to better archive your stuff is that you work on the files, you export the edited JPEGs, and then you throw the edited JPEGs in a separate folder on the same drive. So that way they're backed up on this. Maybe they're backed up on your G drive or on your Google Drive or your Dropbox, or even up on the cloud like I have them. They're all backed up somewhere. And so it's just a good way to work. I haven't deleted files since I lost those 2 drives, and there's still 2 terabytes of like when I was in high school that I think I have that hard drive like at my mom's house somewhere, that as far as I know, the disk itself is fine, but the power source also went out. So it's probably something that I need to like take somewhere, but I have a lot of pictures of like friends from high school in there. And I took a lot of pictures when I was in high school, probably a lot of embarrassing shit. It's probably best that a lot of those photos stay unseen. But, you know, I think storage, for as long as I've been a photographer, and now that I'm doing video, which is even more storage that you have to worry about, I know that it's something that I didn't necessarily think too much about or put a lot of thought into it when I was thinking about how many photos I was taking or how long I was recording or where I was going to put those photos or videos or how I was going to back them up. I think through time, I think don't be like me is what I'm saying. I had to learn the hard way and lose files to be able to like put a system together and back things up. So I would recommend to everyone out there watching this, put a system in place. And it doesn't have to be Backblaze. It could be Dropbox. It could be Google Drive. I think Backblaze for me has always just been the cheapest option, and I always recommend it because of that. But, you know, I also have this big thing behind me that I work off of, so I'm a little spoiled in that way. So, yeah, just figure out a way to back up your stuff. Be safe with your files. You know, make sure that if you do have old hard drives that you haven't turned on in a while, just make sure you turn them on every couple years or every couple months. Make sure that they still power on. You want to avoid this something called bit rot, is when like the JPEGs start going bad. So a way to avoid that is to just make sure to spin them up every so often. And even then, you're not safe. Like sometimes bit rot just happens. But that's it for today, guys. I know it's not like the most riveting topic, storage, but if I can save one person from like losing files, or I can point someone in the direction and into getting a backup somewhere or putting things on the cloud, and if something like this, knock on wood, ever happens to someone, then they have that backup, that second, third, fourth, or even just the memory cards still put away somewhere safe for them to be able to pull the stuff back off of it. So thank you guys for watching. I'll see you guys next week. I'm working on another vlog, more podcasts to come. But until then, keep shooting. Peace.